Hey, welcome. Good night, everyone. Hi, goodies. What's up? Hey, guys. What's up? How you guys doing tonight? Welcome to another episode at Planter Garden TV. Tonight, we're going to talk about container garden because a lot of people do container garden. A lot of people do container garden, and give me 1 second, guys. Sorry for that. Yes, a lot of people do container garden, and I also do container garden, but I do most of my growing in ground. I do most of my growing in ground and my planting. But what I also do, I basically try to use the same method that I use in the ground. Yes, guys, sorry for that. Yes, so the thing about it is, I try to do the same method in container garden, like raised bed and in ground, because it actually works. It actually works. And guys, you will not know unless you try. Don't If you don't try, you will never know. All right? There's a lot of things, not because it's container garden, meaning you cannot get the same result if you using the same method like you use in canteen, in grow. You could get the same method. You just got to think, and sometimes sometimes when you sit down and you really look into it, something just come to you and click to you and tell you, you know what, maybe I need to try this, or maybe I need to try that. It's important because this is how you learn. At the end of the day, I don't know for anyone, but for me, garden is something I look for success. I don't just grow food because I can grow food. I look for success, and I try to put in as much as I can that I can get the best result possible. So, in order for me to do that, I will have to do my own experiment and my own research in my garden with my soil, because at the end of the day, guys, is what works for you. This is it. Is what works for you. Is what works in your zone. It what grows well in your zone. And this is the next thing again you have to pay attention to, because when you grow, when you walking in a, when you're growing in a certain zone, I think it is wise to study the plants then that grows well in your zone. Yes, I think it's wise to study the plants that grows well in your zone because, and you know what, a lot of plants, what from my experience, especially when you're dealing with fruit trees, my experience sometimes you might order a plant, right? You might order a plant. The plant come from, say the plant come from Florida, right? Florida is a hot place, and where you live in is in a colder climate, right? Sometimes the plant already adjusts itself to that climate. Now you have to bring that in your climate. No, this plant got to readjust itself to your climate before it can really start to catch itself and start to grow. You know, so it's a lot of things with plants. Yes, plants adapt. Plants do adapt. But sometimes a lot of them take a different period of time to adapt themselves. So sometimes it's best you buy plants that grows well in your zone. And if you could get them from your zone, is even better than bringing them from a different zone into your zone because the plants have to adjust itself. All right? And many people buy fruit trees and transplant them in containers. Nothing wrong with that because I also grow fruit trees in containers. But one thing I've realized, fruit trees, you know, fruit trees, their roots spread. And a container is really not the size for a fruit tree. If you really want the fruit tree to develop and grow the way it really is supposed to grow, a container is not the right size for the fruit tree because when I look at my peach tree and how far the root has spread, is no way a container, even if you put it in a drum, can basically maintain the root. The only thing is, what's going to happen is not to say that it's not going to grow in the container. That's not what I'm saying. It just will not grow to the full potential. You see, what I'm going to do is going to maintain its growth because if the growth is not spreading and not going down, the plant's not going to grow as it should. So yes, you're going to have plants growing in container, but you're not going to get the amount of fruits and the size that the plant should grow. But that does not mean you cannot grow them. The next thing a lot of people do as well, a lot of people buy fruit trees and they put them in these small containers. And the reason for that is when they want to move the plant, the fruit tree, they want to be able to lift it up and move it. They don't want to put them in these big container like a half a drum. They don't want to put the fruit trees in a half a drum, which might be the best option. But when come to move them, that's when it's becoming difficult for them. So some people keep the fruit trees in container, which I'm not saying that is not going to produce, but what I'm saying is not going to produce to the potential. They're not going to give you the yield that you're looking for because fruit trees grow big and wide. Yes, you have the dwarf variety, if you're trying to grow them in container, it's really wise to try the dwarf variety, because you know the dwarf variety is not going to get too big and the root is not going to spread too wide. But at the same time, you still need a container big enough that this root can spread and do what it's like. Even though it cannot go to the extent it need to go, at least it have some type of plane and able to still give you a harvest. Now, you have fruit trees that if you plant them in ground, they will grow so big. And then you will see tons of fruits growing on them, like peach, like plum, any kind of fruit tree. You will see tons of fruits growing on them, but that same fruit tree, if you grow it in a container, it will never get that big and it will never produce that amount like what it do once it have the root. When you look at, we grow lime trees. We grow lime trees. And when we grow lime tree, what I notice with lemon tree, right? The variety them we actually what I notice about, well, these are the lemon tree you could purchase from the store, right? You know the lemon tree them. What I notice about them, I notice their roots. I notice their roots is not, it's a kind of finey. They have some fine root, and you could actually grow them in a container. So a lemon tree, you could grow it in container, but I still believe if it's in the ground, it will do more better. But at the end of the day, not everyone have the space. And this is what this life is about. It's about growing in small spaces. So no, you could have yes, you could have a small space and you could grow tons of food in that small space. Right? You could have a small space and you could have tons of food growing in this small space. You could use container. You could have a balcony and you could still grow a lot of food on your balcony in a small space. You have so many different that you can give me 1 second, guys. 1 second. You could have a balcony and you could grow. You could have a small space and you could grow. A good way to grow in small space is like if you could do vertical garden. A vertical garden, say for instance, you're trying to grow cucumber, say you're trying to grow squash, you could create a trail. You could create a trail and allow them to run up on the trail instead of on the ground. So while they're running on the trail, you could be planting food also in the ground in the little space. You have something, some people call it companion garden, some people call it tree sister gardening. Hey, so blessed, how you doing? Thank you for being here. What's going on? Yes, welcome, welcome. Yes, they have something they call tree sister gardening. What is tree sisters? Tree sisters is planting, like you could plant corn and you could plant okra, right? You know the plant and the okra run upwards. And then you could also plant string beans. You know, like string beans? Now, on the string beans gonna run up. All right, good to see you. Happy New Year. Yes. So the string bean now gonna be running on the corn and the okra. So that is another way how to create a trail for your string bean. So now you have 3 plants. They're producing and they're walking on each other. Companion, right. You have some people call it companion planting, and then some people call it tree sisters. So yes, same thing, companion planting. So all this is what help create space for you in a small space. You want to grow string bean, instead of you try to grow them by themselves and take up all this space, you plant them between some corn and some okra because they grow upwards. There's many ways to save and create space in your garden. Is many ways to do that. You just got to see what's work. And also, when you're gonna do seeing as well, you're gonna be seeing what works good with each other. This is your thing, is to see what work good with each other. So gardening is not something, guys, and this is the thing, man, is not something that you will master overnight. This thing takes time because there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn in this thing that is not gonna take overnight. But the thing is, the more you do it, the more you learn. Once you're willing to learn. Once you're willing to learn, the more you do it, the more you see, the more you learn. But don't underestimate a small space to do gardening. Don't underestimate. It's so much you can do. Now, if you have a small space, right? Say you have a small space. You want to grow some herbs and you want to grow some squash. You want to grow different things. What you could do, a good thing to do is the herbs them, instead of you try to create a space just for the herbs them, what you do, you plant the herbs them between. You plant them in between. Because at the end of the day, your space is limited and you're trying to grow as much as you can within this season. So a good way, instead of you say, all right, let me plant some string bean here, let me plant some herbs here, let me plant some squash here, what you actually doing, you're taking up all the space right there. You're actually taking up your space. You have to know how to utilize the space. So like I now was saying, like we now was mentioning, companion garden is amazing. Where you plant plants, like I'm telling you right now, corn and okra that grows up in the air like that, you can use string beans. You can use string beans with them. Even cucumber. Because they're gonna wind themselves around them, but at the same time, these plants are still growing. All right, so now you're gonna have string bean producing, corn producing and okra producing in a small area right here. Now you come over, seeing these corn and the spring beans grows up, you come a little over and you plant whatever else you want to plant. You could also mix in with herbs. You mix the herbs in between. Say you planting cabbage, you planting collards. You could mix the herbs them in between because your space is limited, and your space, you want to see how much plant you could squeeze in within that space. So you have to know how to plant in small spaces so you could get a maximum yield, a nice garden. Because once you know how to maximize your space, that's why you got to study too, guys, because you want to study how the plants them run, how big they get, how much space they need. Like for instance, if you want to grow pepper as well. I personally, if I'm planting pepper, more than one pepper, I'll basically give them at least 2 feet apart. Like pepper, because my pepper them grow real tall too. But I plant them like 2 feet apart. But even though you plant the pepper 2 feet apart, you still could plant herbs in between. You still could plant turmeric in between, which, for my experience, turmeric works well between bell pepper. I'm telling you right now. I don't know what, but turmeric plant between bell pepper produce well. Even the peppers is something with the combination with their roots. Because remember, I keep telling you guys, there's a lot of plants release nutrients and other things in the soil that really works with other plants. So there's a lot of combination in plant that really works well. So for my experience, bell pepper and turmeric works well together. So now, small space. Remember, we're talking about small space. So if you're growing bell pepper and you plant them 2 feet apart, right? Because you know they need a little room to spread and they need a room to go. Now, in between the 2 feet apart, you could chuck few things up inside, like the turmeric, like you could put a basil, you could put a sage, these type of things in between, and they will grow. All right. Once is an area where there's sunlight and they could get their sunlight, they do well. And the thing about it is, too, most of these herbs prefer to be in shaded area. Let me just say this, and let me know if you guys go through this. In the spring, in the cool weather, where we see happen, the herbs them producing like crazy. Every minute you're harvesting, and they just keep pushing out fresh leaf. But from the time the heat comes on, what happens? They're barely pushing out any leaf. They're standing up, but they're struggling. They're barely pushing out any leaf. What I learned from that, they do not like the heat. The heat is too poking for them. They prefer the cooler weather. So this is why I sometimes plant them in between others, so the plants them that grows over them could shade them. And it works for me because I see production in that form. And I see if you have the sun shining over them, I see where they don't do well. You see? But if you have them in a shaded area, say you have them under some pepper tree, and and they're over them, that shade is kind of keeping them a little cool, so they push out more leaf. when you look at kale, check kale out too. A lot of these edible leaf is the same thing with the edible leaf, like the kale, like the collards. They do better in the colder weather. So this is why when I plant kale, I will chop, because you plant kale all year. So when you plant the kale all year, when the weather starts getting more warmer, now I bring out the okra now, and I start to plant the okra right side the kale. I start to plant the okra then between the kale then, because that somehow or the other helps give them that shade. Because to me, for my experience, they don't like direct sun. Even broccoli don't like direct sun. Broccoli, cauliflower, kale, they don't like that direct. Even the cabbage do better in the spring than in the summer. So all these edible leaves do well in shade. So what I'm saying is, if you have small space, you have your plants them that you growing, that grows up in the air, you could go under them. Once there's some type of sunlight is shining through, you could go under them and plant your herbs, plant your kale, these type of stuff, because they're gonna create a shade for them. And because of they getting that shade, they start pushing out more leaf, because at the end of the day, that's what you're looking for. This is my experience I'm sharing here. This is my experience. Pepper, they could stand. Let me tell you something about pepper. And people, let me tell you, what really messed up a pepper plant, the type of weather that could destroy a pepper plant, is weather below 30 degrees. Below 30 degrees, 30, 32. These are the type of weather that will mess up a pepper plant. If you get in 37 degrees, 40 degrees, that's not gonna mess up. That's not gonna mess up the pepper plant. It's the frost, and it's the frost that mess up. Even the young pepper plant, even though the young pepper plant can stand cold weather, even you plant them early, they still could stand that cold weather. What messed them up is that below 30 degrees. So for small container gardeners, guys, like I mentioned, or small space garden, you can plant, use trail. So if you want to grow some squash, you could use a trail. If you want to grow some cucumber, you could also use a trail. You want to grow peas, black-eyed peas, beans, you could grow trail. You also can plant corn, okra, and allow the vines to wrap around their stalk, and you could get a production right there. So in a little space, you could have 3 plants growing and be able to produce for you within that little space. All right? And one thing I want to say to you guys, because many people believe is how much you pay for the container that's matter, right? Many people believe that. A lot of people believe is how much you pay for the container that's matter. Well, I'm gonna tell you this. is not about the container and how much it's about the container, but it's not about how much you pay for it. Because I can get a free container, pack it the way I pack it, and I guarantee you, I can get a beautiful harvest. And you could pay $100 for your container, and you might even get the harvest I get. So it's not about how much you pay for the container, it's the size of the container that's matter. The size. How much soil this container can hold. Is this container big enough to house this root for this plant? Because, like I was mentioning earlier, in a container, a fruit tree, this is a prime example. You could plant a fruit tree in the ground, grow big, massive, and produce in abundance. And you could plant the same fruit tree in a container, and it produces, but it will never get as big as that one. So it's the same thing. If the container is not big enough for the plant, it will not produce the way it should, and it will not grow as big as it should. Because if the roots have no room to grow, no room to move, then the plant is not gonna grow. The root got to spread. And that feed itself, now the plant grows. All right, so a small space container garden.
Looking at the news, I'm in Austin.
You could do a lot in a small space. So don't get discouraged. You could do a lot in a small space. Don't get discouraged at all. So how you guys doing tonight? Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everyone. Glad to see you guys. Glad to see you guys okay. Yes, glad to see you guys okay. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you all for all the support. Yes, thank you all for all the support. I appreciate you all. And, shout out to all the people in Africa. Shout out to the people in England. Shout out to the people in, all over the world, in the USA, Canada. Shout out to all the, just shout out, man. Shout out to all the people out there who putting in the work, man, and giving this information, this true positive information of how to survive and how to grow food. This thing is for real, man. Like I know I was talking about container, right? I know I was talking about container, and this container here, these are little things. I ain't pay a dime for this container, right? I ain't pay nothing for it. It's a food. Whatever was in this is food. So it's not nothing you got to, if I'm using container, I got to be a food source, not chemical. All right? No. When I look at this, I say, okay, you know what I'm going to do with this? Here what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to bore some hole to the bottom, and this is the cover for the container. I'm going to bore some hole to the bottom and put this to the bottom of the container. You know what I'm saying? So when I wet the plant, the water going to hold in the cover. So you're going to create, you're going to get that little moisture down there. No, this is a deep enough container that you could store some seed into. So I'm gonna put a pigeon peas inside this, or my pigeon peas them put out some leaf, put out some root. Them that I put in the napkin, they push out some root. So I'm going to put them in soil now. Now this is really deep, so this could definitely house a plant until springtime. My thing is, guys, like I know I was saying, it's not about how much you pay for the container. It's about the container big enough to hold enough soil inside for the root of the plant. So we actually shout out to all you guys who out there doing the seed, putting your seed together now, because I think now is the time you got to get busy now with seed. If you're starting from seed and if you're doing seeds from indoors, now is the time. Now is definitely the time. You got to get ready now. Because when March come, you want to make sure that your plants then is big enough and strong enough, ready to go outside to deal with the spring weather. And don't forget, guys, you have to harden up your plants. If you're doing your plant indoors, before you take them out and put them in the direct sun and plant them in the ground or plant them in a container, you have to allow them to get the shade of the sun. Because if the sun hit them, you got to remember, the light they was dealing with inside is different than the sun out there. So if you take them up and you just transplant them in the hot sun, you might lose them after dealing with them for so many months. And now you plant them outside in the sun and you could lose them because the sun could scorch them up. Their leaf is already baby plus tender. So what you do, you take them outside in a shaded area where the sun, the humidity is up, the sun shining down. So they start getting accustomed to the hotter weather because they was inside, they wasn't getting that kind of heat. So now you got to allow them to get to that, start to adjust, because like we know, plants adjust. So when you adjust it, when it starts adjusting, then you say, all right, now is the time to plant them. Now, when the sun hit them, the sun is not gonna be messing with them in that form. Hey Kim, Ami, how are you? First live I ever caught with you, just watching your live of 3 days ago. Oh wow, thank you. Glad to have you and welcome to our channel. And I'm glad you're watching the other live because I try to give a lot of information. We talk about different topics, but the most I talk about is gardening, surviving, how to grow food. Yes, so welcome. I'm glad to have you here. All right. Yes. So for the people who want to do container garden, you might have container in your house. This is not a container to plant anything. This is not big enough. This is really not big enough. But now we're doing indoor planting. We could use this and put a plant down inside it, fill it up with dirt. This is a lot of room for a baby plant to grow until the spring. After the spring, you transplant it from this and you put it in either in a bigger container or in the ground. But so small space garden, you could do so much in a small space garden. Now, let me give you another idea, right? Let me give you another idea. No, I have some fruit trees in. Hey, Godis, what's up, sis? How you doing? Yes. There's another thing you can do in small space gardening, right? Like for instance, I have some drum that I plant a few fruit tree into. And in that same container, the drum, in that same container, I have cantaloupe plant, I have sweet stevia. I have like 5 different plants in the container with the fruit tree inside. And my cantaloupe, I definitely was getting cantaloupe. I have a cantaloupe. I have a sweet stevia. I have a so much thing out of this one container. So you could have a drum. Say, for instance, you have a half a drum. You fill it up with soil and you, whatever. You could plant several different plants in this thing. In a half a drum and a fruit tree, you could plant at least 6 different herbs in that container. Maybe more. I have a mango tree in a container. I had like about full, the root was full with plants. These are ways you can utilize space. Don't just believe, oh, it's a fruit tree in the container. I cannot put nothing to the around. No, you could do that. And you'll be surprised too. Because like I'm saying, a lot of these herbs and plants that we plant around other plants, they work really well with each other. They work really well. And these are things you have to look into. See what works best with each other. Every year, you do rotate crop. You rotate your crop then. And this is why, you see, this is the thing. Gardening come from, the experience come from years of planting. You see, because what you do this year, if it ain't work for you, you got to try something the next year. So see what I'm saying? You can't learn everything in 1 year. So if it didn't work this year for me, then I say, okay, I'm gonna move it from here and I'm gonna plant it over that side. And then when I plant it over that side, I say, okay, look how beautiful they produce this year. I planted them over there last year. They ain't doing well at all. But when I plant them in this area, look how wonderful they're doing. No, you find a space. You find the area that you need to put this plant. Like for instance, I have bell pepper that I just grow. They just grow all 8 feet tall. I even grew another pepper tree this year, last year, 10 feet tall. But guess what? I used to plant my bell pepper them in different areas, and you know, I keep rotating. And when I find that spot where the bell pepper produce so much and grow so tall, I say, okay, I'm gonna be planting my bell pepper them right here. And from that day on, that's where I plant my bell pepper then. And they produce so much. So sometimes, and even though you're growing in container, you still can rotate your crop. Like for instance, right? For instance, I had some avocado plant, young avocado plant. I also have some mango plant. I had sugar apple, soursop, papaya, because I started them from seed. So there was actually baby. And I just get some serious sun. I have them in containers and I just have some real serious sun. And I have them in the direct sun because I know these plants is tropical. And I know these plants love the heat. But what I was thinking about at the time, I wasn't thinking that these are baby plants. So because there's baby plants, you cannot put them in the direct sun. Because in the direct sun, the heat is stunted in them. The heat is too much for them. There's babies. And I sit down and I say, wait, hold on, this plant is not growing at all. Then it clicked to me, these are baby plants. You have them in the direct sun where they get like 6-7 hours of heat all day. You know what I did? I take the containers them and I put them in a shaded area under some trees in a shaded area, and it just changed. The plants them just start growing. So it's experience. You have to try, and this is how you see, and this is how you learn. So what I've learned through that, I've learned that baby plants, whether it's fruit trees, whether it's tropical, doesn't matter. They don't want to be in direct sun when they're young. They prefer to be in a cool, shaded area, at least till they're about at least 2 years. When you starting them from seed, I'm talking about fruit tree, they need at least 2 to 3 years of shaded area before you put them in that direct sun. Because now, within months, some of my avocado tree reached 5 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet within months. And I had them in the direct sun and they was not growing at all. So these are things you have to pay attention to. Even though you might be growing tomatoes, you might be growing peppers, it doesn't matter. You have to watch them. If they're not doing well in an area, try a different area. If you got to switch the container, well, as we know pepper, they could take as much hot sun as possible. We also know that okra could take as much hot sun as possible. We also know the tomato could take as much hot sun as possible. So these plants, you already know. Wherever the sun shines the most, that's where you put them. There's plants that love the direct sun, and there's plants that just prefer the cool. So these are things we got to pay attention to. And I'm going to do a live or a video where I'm going to be naming out the plants then that, from my experience, prefer to be in hot sun, and also the ones them that prefer shaded area. They strive better in the shade. They ain't designed for that full heat. Cabbage, from my experience, prefer cooler weather. Broccoli, from my experience, cooler weather. Beet, cooler weather. So many of these plants prefer the cooler weather. So now, you got to know. Wait, hold on, guys, hold on. Pull out the light, hold on. Yes, sorry. So now you got to know where to put them. And like I now mentioned, guys, your space ain't got to be big to do a lot of growing. Like I now mentioned to you, you could get big containers, like you could get half a drum, or you could get big container, food source container. All right, like you could get them big drum. You have drum that you could get, and these drum is food was inside them. Might be juice, might be what, but food. You're looking for the ones them that have food in them. So you wash them out properly, and when you wash them out properly, you could end up use them to grow your food. you have a half a drum, you could plant a lot of food, herbs in a half a drum. In a half a drum, you could plant a lot of herbs in a half a drum. Believe it. Because the thing about herb is, you got to remember, while they're growing and pushing leaf, remember you harvesting. You see what I'm saying? So it's like you pruning them. So while you pruning them, they're actually getting room to grow and produce more. Because every time they grow, every time they push leaf, you harvesting. You see where I'm coming from? So you could grow so much in a half a drum, even though you have a fruit tree inside it, you could plant them right around the fruit tree. You could get beautiful harvest. You could get plenty herbs out of that one drum. I do it every year. And it's not, hey, GT, what's up, man? Thank you for being here. Yeah, it's the truth of the matter of fact. Just going to be in the. Okay, all right. Thank you for being here, man. Oh, you're cooking? All right. Happy holidays, man. Yes. So it's so much you could do. Like, for instance, right? I had a mango tree in a half a drum. Because you know, the mango tree could get really big. So I have it growing in a half a drum. But at the same time, I plant a bunch of herbs around the mango tree. You see? So every time they grow, I'm harvesting. So it's not like they're creating any situation because I keep harvesting. And the more I harvest, is the more they push out. They push out more leaf, and you know, but when the heat comes on now, they slow down. You see where I'm coming from? So all is spring. I'm telling you right now, if you trying to get a lot of harvest from your herbs, I think you need to start setting your seed on them now so you can get to plant them all in the spring that they could produce within the 3 months. You see that 3-4 months? They could be producing so you could be getting a lot of harvest. Because when the hot sun comes, it slows down. Broccoli. You want to plant? I know a lot of people plant broccoli in the fall. Broccoli could work in the fall too. Cabbage, you could plant them in the fall too. But if you plant in cabbage, if you remember, cabbage could take cold weather, broccoli, cauliflower, collards, these plants could take a lot of cold weather. What I just do, February. Well, I mean, you know, it still depends on the zone you're in. But in February, I'm outside planting cabbage, broccoli. I don't have my seed on them, my seedlings on them already germinate, already looking beautiful. So what I do, I allow them to grow and I start planting them February. Yes, within that time, they grow pretty slow because the cold weather, they're not getting the sun like that. They grow pretty slow, but guess what? From the time the spring comes, they just shoot up one time. You see what I'm saying? Now I'm able to harvest my broccoli over and over before this heavy heat comes on. I'm not sure. Is there anyone in here who grow broccoli? Do you experience that when the heat comes on, do your broccoli still produce like how it was doing in the spring? You could press one if you feel like. But they do better in the colder weather, which is fall or the spring. From the time summer hit, your cabbage and them not doing well. Broccoli start producing, start shooting flowers. So it's a lot. So you want to be in the early part of the spring. You want to be in the early part before the summer comes on. CC Juna. Okay, well, all right. So someone in the chat also experienced that. So all right. So it don't happen to me alone. Hey, CC Juna, what's up? Thank you for being here. Yeah, so this is the thing. So because of growing for so long, the experience that I've gained, this is basically what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to share the information. All this information I'm sharing with you guys is come from through experience. That's what it comes to, because I plant and I observe, I pay attention, I look at things, I see how it works, I see how this plant doing with this plant, like onion and garlic. There's certain plants you just don't want to plant onion and garlic with. All right? Onion and garlic and side. Onion, garlic, and side. They have a thing inside them that I believe they release in the soil through their root. It don't work with every plant. It really don't. What I see it works with, I'm going to tell you from, this is my experience, guys. What I see, you could plant with onion, chive, garlic. What I see you could plant with them, lettuce, celery, parsley. You see these type of plant works well with onion and garlic. Works well from my experience. So, okay, let me see. Nothing much. I've been watching and picking up the jewel you drop. Thanks for that. Oh, you're welcome, Sissy. Jordan, you're welcome. Appreciate you coming through, man. Yes, I try to do it late night. I try to do it that late night. So for the people who might be up, and sometimes people from different places also be up, and we could talk, we could have this conversation, man. Yeah. But yes, certain plant like peppers, I'm not gonna plant peppers with garlic. I'm not gonna plant okra with garlic. I'm not gonna plant these type of plants with garlic from my experience. Lettuce, celery, parsley, cilantro, these type of plants, and fawn, these type of plants, from my experience, goes well with them. But certain plants, they're not gonna do well in that soil, because you know how garlic smell already. You know how onion smell. So something whatever they do in the soil, it works for certain plants, but it don't work for some other plants. So you have to know which type of plant works with each other. That's gonna still give you great harvest. You see? And soil. I can't say this enough, guys. Soil plays a big role in a garden. The soil plays a big role in a garden. I'm telling you this right now. The soil plays a big role in the garden. Like for instance, right? We all know where our plants feed from. I'm trying to figure out the right pH for my soil. Okay, okay, all right. I'm gonna give you some input from my experience, right? But soil is one of the main thing in gardening. And why soil is one of the main thing in gardening? Because the plants feed. And where the plants feed from? The soil, under the soil, right? The plants feed from under the soil. I did a live the other day, and I was explaining about liquid manure or liquid fertilizer, however you want to call it, liquid fertilizer. And I explained that in every soil, you need certain things. Like, I can't name everything it needs, but dealing with soil for so long, you understand certain things, you see certain things, and you know when certain thing ain't right with your soil. But if you as a person and you have an idea of what your plant need. Your plant need minerals, your plant need carbon, your plant need nutrients, all these things your plant need, right? Now, you know, if you want to make a fertilizer for your plant, a liquid fertilizer, because we could add anything around our plant and allow it to break down. Remember, the plant cannot eat that until it break down and break down enough that when the rain or when you wet it, it turn liquid, and that's how they feed. When it turn liquid, but that have to break down first because the plant cannot eat compost. It's when the water mixed with it, the juice, the nutrients run out, and that's where the plant suck it up. Now, if you're doing liquid fertilizer, you got to know which plant could give you, the carbon, the nitrogen. You got to know these things. If you don't know, it's okay. But if you know, it's make it easier for you. Because this is how you could balance. Same thing you're saying, balance your soil. You see what I'm saying? Because your soil needs all these, and one cannot overpower enough. Another one, it have to balance out. And next thing a lot of people has made mistake. We make mistake with. There's more compost than dirt, soil. It should never be more compost than dirt or soil, however you want to call it. It should never be more compost than dirt in your raised bed, in your container. Remember, the dirt, the soil is essential. This is what the plant used to. This is what plants love. The dirt. You only add different things to maintain, to add. Like you might want to top it up with a little nutrient. Like you might want to top it up with a little nitrogen, minerals. But you can't overpower the soil in your raised bed or your container. The soil have to dominate. These things is only to add more to the soil, because remember, the more you plant, the more the plant suck. So if you plant in somewhere over and over for years, you planting, the soil gonna start to get weaker because the plant's sucking every year. So your job is to cut it back. You see what I'm saying? But you gotta do it in not too much. Because if you do it too much, the compost gonna start to dominate the soil. It's gonna become more compost than soil. And that should never be. The soil, the dirt, whatever you want to call it, should always be more than the compost. You see? So that could be a problem. And you also need to balance your soil with whatever you put in around it. You see, what I'm trying to say, guys. The more you do it, the more you learn. This is why I go in my garden and I do live directly from my garden. Because I don't just want to sit down and talk about these things. I also want to show. I do many videos about how I do my garden. I do live direct, how I'm walking the soil, what I'm adding into the soil, you see, different things. So the more you do it, the more you learn, the more you experience. You understand? So now this, you're paying attention and you're seeing. You see? I know if my soil is lack of something. I could watch and I could feel. And I could see, nah, this soil needs something, man. You see what I'm saying? All right, okay. Yes, you could see that your soil needs something. If you're really watching, you could really see the growth of the plant. You see, I know when my soil is lack of something because the growth, the growth and how the plant usually grow, the way they take off. Sometimes the color of the leaf also give you indication that there might be too much of something or there might not be enough. No, you got to try to balance that out. No. But a good way to balance your soil, I'm going to tell you this right now. One of the best way to balance your soil is reusing. Say, for instance, you have an outdoor garden. Reusing the weeds that grows up in your garden. You see all them weed that grows up, and maybe you throw them away. Reuse them. Another thing I do, I don't really take up their roots. What I do, I might, I might take the machete and take out the top. But the roots remain. Because a lot of these things we call weeds that grows up in our garden is what's feeding our soil. It's what releasing nutrient. It's what releasing nitrogen. You see what I'm... So a lot of people don't like to see these things in the garden. So what they do, they cover them. They do all kind of stuff, just not for them to grow. But what you actually doing, you eliminating the process of how things to work, operate, nature, how things to operate in your garden. You blacken the process. Because this same weed that grows up, that we might like because they're growing up too fast, is the same thing that releasing nutrients in the soil to help balance out the soil. So sometimes we might overthink man, my soil I need to balance it like CC Junior is, well, like CC Junior was mentioning. He want to know, or she want to know, I don't know, maybe want to know the PHP of a balanced soil. Well, I'm giving you a good idea here. The weeds them that grows up in your garden, if you take them out, put them in a pile, allow them to break down, and reuse them in your soil when they break down. Also, the I don't just take off the top and leave the root because I understand what these roots do for soil. This is why all the spring you see these things comes up first before you even start planting. They're shooting up out the ground already. They're doing their job. That's what they're doing. They're doing their job. This is why I always say, prepare your soil in the fall and in the spring is planting time. So in the spring, when you out there plowing and trying to dig, and digging up all the weeds that grows up in your garden to plant, these weeds comes up now for do their job, release their nutrients in your soil. But you know they're digging when you should be planting. This is why I prepare my soil in the fall, winter. In the spring, I goes out to plant. Then we have cover crop that also come up in the winter. All these things is what protecting our soil from the winter and also feeding the soil. This thing is not just growing up there. This is how nature operates. They're growing up for a reason, for a purpose. So we need to cherish them. And if we take them up, we put them in a pile to go back in our soil. And that will help you balance out your soil. So sometimes, you know, the way how people put it out there is like you got to go and buy this and it's a rocket science trying to figure it out. When it's so simple. Nature does that work. If you allow nature to do its thing, you wouldn't even have to worry about that. You see where I'm coming from? Nature will walk that in for you. All you do, let them weed grow, allow them to grow up a little. Then if you find they're getting too tall, you take off the top, you throw them in a pile, and you leave them there for breakdown. Meanwhile, they're still growing. You see where I'm coming from? And while they're growing, what they're doing what they're supposed to do in the soil. They're making your soil balanced, they're making your soil fertile, they're making your soil healthy, because that's their job. Let nature take its course in your garden, and I guarantee you, your job will become much easier. All right? You just have to maintain. And maintaining is adding that the soil could rejuvenate, help rejuvenate itself. So what you do, all these same weed you pull out and throw in the compost to turn compost, you bring that back in the soil. You also could, a combination of plants that can give nitrogens, minerals together for your compost tea. The plants receive liquid fertilizer faster because it's liquid. And how it feeds? From the liquid, not the natural compost you put around it. That has to break down. And when the rain falls, if If you notice, right? When the rain fall and soak the earth really nice, what you see happen? What you see happen? You see a growth. Okay, let me see. Yes, I think I overdo things that complicate. Yes, yes, that's CC Junior. That's the thing. That's the thing. Sometimes we overdo, and all you got to do, let nature do its course. That's what we got to do. We maintain, we add we like a leaf, we add we like the weeds, we add them. But if you allow the natural process to take place, you're gonna see process, you're gonna see progress. I'm telling you, listen to me, guys. I've been growing off the same spot over 10 years, right? On the same spot over 10 years. And today, and last year, I'm still growing bell pepper tree, 8 feet tall. I'm still growing pepper tree 10 feet tall. Same spot. You know why? Because I love nature. I'm a guy who believes in growing food natural. I don't believe in chemical at all. I don't believe in that at all. I don't believe in that at all. So I allow nature to take its course and walk in the soil. All I do is maintain my garden, but I never allow the compost to overpower the dirt. And this is where we just do a lot of time too. We just keep piling compost in the raised bed. But what we're not doing, we're not mixing, we're not digging the dirt underneath and mix it. Or we're not, say for instance, right? Say for instance, if I add leaf in my raised bed, you know what I do after that? I dig dirt and I put on top of the leaf. I never just add leaf and just leave that. No, because the dirt, like I keep saying, the dirt supposed to dominate, not compost. Compost supposed to add nutrients, mineral, these type of stuff. Help maintain that because the plant's sucking every year. The dirt supposed to dominate. So if you put a pile of leaf in your raised bed, you're supposed to cover that. You're supposed to put dirt inside that to cover that. You see what I'm coming from? You can't just be just putting leaf. It's gonna become a time when all you have there is compost. Hold on 1 minute, guys. Yes. Sorry for that, guys. What time is it? Oh, wow. After 12. Hey, guys, thank you for the likes, guys. Oh, wow. I appreciate it. 14 likes. Thank you, guys, so much. Truly appreciate that. Thank you, guys, for the support. Truly appreciate that. That's wonderful. Thank you all so much. And if you haven't subscribed, you could always subscribe, guys, because we do a lot of videos. We upload a lot of videos. We do live direct from our garden. We show basically everything that we're doing and we show it live. So it's not to say we just come in and sit down and talk. We also show our results. We also show what we use. We show that it's working. We show all of that. So and we don't use nothing from the stove. We use what we have, which is leaf, like leaves that fall from the tree. Sometimes a tree might fall and then the tree break down. We use that and we add it in our soil. We also make our own compost pile where we add leaf, we add weeds that we pick up out the garden and we throw in these piles and just leave them there for break down years upon years and just leave them. These are the things we use in our soil. But you also got to know how much. You also got to know how much to add to your soil in your raised bed. Because, like what I'm saying is, sometimes, okay, let's put it this way. Let me just put it this way. You might be cooking and you add too much salt and it just messed up the whole pot. You add too much salt, you got to trade out. It ain't good. It ain't good no more. It's too much. Same it could be with sugar. You add it, you're making tea, you're making juice. You add too much sugar and that too sweet. You might got to go through more water or you might just got to throw it away. It have to have a balance. It have to be at a certain level. So don't overpower your compost. Like, let me tell you what me see. Let me tell you what me see some people just do. Let me tell you what me see some people just do, right? Some people just go to the store and buy bags and bags and bags of compost, right? And just shake it in their raised bed. And that's what they planting the food in. They planting their food in the compost. So the plant is not even getting dirt. It's not even connecting to dirt. Just the compost. You see where I'm coming from? Number one, the compost only supposed to add nutrients or whatever it can to the soil. But then you plant everything in all this stuff you buy, just dump it in the raised bed. No, if you want to do something, say you want to do that, you go to the store, you buy your compost, you throw it in your raised bed. Number one, you should mix it in with the soil, with the dirt. You should mix it together. You should also, when you throw that in, you should get a shovel or whatever and add more soil on top of it. So it mix. You see what I'm saying? So it mixing together with each other, not just the compost. The soil, that dirt have to be the dominant in your raised bed, even in your container. I personally, when I fill in a container with soil, I'll make sure if the container having at least 70% of dirt. Even if it's clay soil, it doesn't matter. At least 70%. And the other 30% are maybe like compost added. But the soil must be the dominant, not the compost. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're not gonna grow. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're not gonna grow. But when you're looking for plants with able to feed you with what you need, with what your body needs, you got to give the plant what it needs. You see what I'm saying? For instance, if the plants have nutrients, right? If the plant's sucking nutrients from the soil, then the plant's gonna able to give you that. But if it's not sucking nutrients, it barely getting any nutrients. You see what I'm coming from? So whatever we feed our plants with a plant giving back to us. It's not, when common soil, guys, is not that complicated, and you ain't got to do too much. Your job is maintaining, and the maintaining you doing is adding a little, like for instance, when you add a little compost around your plant, you see what you do? You add a little around the root. You don't just take a whole wheelbarrow and pile it by the root. No, you you sprinkle a little around the root. Because the soil's supposed to dominate at all times. And guys, this is from my experience. And I'm gonna tell you something again. The taste of the food. Very important, guys. The food. You see, the food. Guys, you could be eating lettuce. You could be eating lettuce, you could be eating tomato, you could be eating all the vegetables in the world. Until these vegetables don't have nutrition, they don't have vitamins, they don't have what it takes to strengthen your body, it ain't make no sense. You eat them. It's like you're just fooling yourself. You see what I'm coming from? No. If you, I believe in health. This is why I grow my food like this too. If you growing food, you tell me you growing food. Your food should able to give you you should be growing the food in a way that it could nourish your body. You see what I'm saying? What's nourish our body? The food we eat, the sunlight, the air, the water. These are the things that nourish our body. So now, sorry guys. Right. So now, if you growing your food, like for instance, we complain about how certain place you go and buy the food ain't even, but yet if we growing it the same way, why complain then? We should take that stand. If you choose to grow your own food, you should take that stand to make sure that this food I'm growing is gonna nourish my body. You understand? I'm not supposed to have to run to a store to boost my immune system when I know what can help boost my immune system. You see what? We understand garlic. We understand the benefit of garlic. We understand the benefit of turmeric. We understand the benefit of lemon. These three combined together, we have an idea why we're not growing them. You see where I'm coming from? Why we not growing a lemon tree? Why we not growing turmeric? Why we not growing garlic? If we know the power of these things, why we not growing them? This should be our priority to make sure that these things work so well with our body. We should be growing them. And that's how I see it, guys. But I'm not here to tell you what you need to grow. All right? We're just having a conversation. You got to know what you need to grow. I'm not here to pressure anybody into growing what they don't want to grow. But I'm just saying, that's how I look at things. I look at it as, wow, turmeric is really good. Turmeric is something really good, man. You know? But I'm not growing it. I've learned the benefit of turmeric. I've learned the benefit of ginger and gingerite. The benefit of turmeric. I've learned the benefit of ginger. I've learned the benefit of lemon. Why am I not growing them? But that's why I choose what I'm growing. I don't just grow anything. I choose the things I want to grow. I grow the things that could help clean out my system. I grow the things that could help boost my system. That's how I look at it, guys. Because at the end of the day, if you're growing these things and then you still got to go to the store to buy something to clean out your system, I don't know. If you got to buy something for build your immune system, when we have ideas of, okay, these things works for that in that area. Like for instance, I'm growing soursop tree, right? Soursop. We learn that soursop tree, soursop leaf have its benefit, right? I'm growing it not for the fruits, because I know I'm not gonna get no fruits. You know, maybe I would, maybe not. But I'm not growing it for the fruits. I'm growing it for the leaf. You know why? Because I've understand. Yeah. Yes. So the soursop leaf, we understand the benefit of soursop leaf. So I'm only growing it for the sake of the leaf. All right? Because I grew up eating soursop. I used to love soursop, but I never know the leaf had such a benefit. I never know that. Is a few years ago, I've realized, I've learned that soursop leaf have a lot of benefit. Also, the mango leaf and the avocado. I'm growing avocado as well too. Not really for the fruit, for the leaf, because now we understand their leaf carry benefit. So this is how I do it, guys. I'm not just getting up and go out there and plant any and everything. I choose the things I planted. I think it's a good idea. And I also think if you growing food, you should grow food that can help your body. You should grow food to nourish your body. You should grow food to help clean out your system. You should grow food to build your immune system. That's how I see it. And you also should try to grow your food in the form that you can get the nutrients, the mineral, the vitamins. You should be able to get these things from your food you grow. That's why I believe in growing my garden natural, guys. And not bragging or anything, but my garden always green and healthy, always. So I just want to say, man, appreciate each and every one of you for coming out tonight. Thank you all for the support. And don't forget to hit the like button, guys, because this kind of information is valuable information I'm giving you guys, because it's from experience. It's not someone who just sit down around a computer and just speak it. It's someone who actually doing exactly what he's telling you and giving you ideas that maybe you can try to. Maybe you can try. See if it works for you. All right? So I just want to say thank you all again for coming out on this beautiful night. Hopefully, I'll see you guys tomorrow night again, maybe about 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're going to continue this because, yes, so you're welcome, Stacey. You're welcome, GT Junior. So hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow around this time again, because guess what? Garden season is coming and we might believe, oh, that's quite in the spring. Well, guess what? We in January. Before you wink, we will be in February. Before you wink, March will be right up on our shoulder. So let's get it. Let's get all the information in. Let's get the new gardeners prepared and ready. And CC Junior, we talk a lot about soil over here as well too. So I hope to see you guys tomorrow. But just hit the notification bell, guys. So in case at least you could get the notification when I go live, because I also go live directly from my garden where you could see everything in action. All right? So you guys have a blessed and wonderful night. See you guys soon, all right? Good night. Good night, GT. Good night, CC, Junior. Good night, good eat. So bless everybody who come in tonight, and everyone, even though you didn't show yourself, still appreciate you joining in tonight, all right? Appreciate you guys. Good night.